Welcome to the Exhorter podcast. We aim to stir up love and good works through bite-sized biblical discussions. Today is going to be a little different. It's just me and Kyle.
And then there were two.
We had some traveling and we had some family taken care of and sick little kids, and that usually just kind of throws everything.
Yeah, Paul, you're fired.
We gave you the last chance.
Nate, you're on notice.
Pirate code.
Nah, just kidding. Life happens, and unfortunately, you have to hear just the two least beautiful sounding voices.
Well, we'll call it the ginger hour is what we'll call it. So, Kyle, what are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about some extracurriculars. What I mean by that is gospel meetings. We tend to think of church as something you do on Sunday. You go to worship or Bible class on Sunday, and we got Wednesday Bible class, and there's a couple things, but really going to church on Sunday is like the main requirement. I know that's not the right way to talk about it, but I'm just using a vernacular that we all understand. Sunday church is the main thing, but what about when something comes up that is outside of that, in addition to Sunday? That's why I called it extracurriculars. Like a gospel meeting. That's something that if you grew up in the church, you're very familiar with that idea, and you probably have some memories of going to gospel meetings or youth forums or things like that. And first question is that a biblical idea? And I think there's a great example in Acts chapter 20. I imagine that every time Paul on his journeys would come to a new town, you get Christians, maybe there'd be a couple different congregations in that city, and when they heard Paul was coming, they would probably make arrangements and go hear him. So I kind of picture that Paul's visits to these cities on his journeys would be like what we would equate to a modern day gospel meeting, where we want to hear what Paul's been up to. We want to hear the success he's had in evangelizing in these parts where the gospel has not been preached before. We want to get updates on other people that we know. How is Apollos doing? Maybe it's a church where Apollos had been. They probably like to hear these updates. And also, I would imagine being an apostle, simply the caliber of his preaching would be enough to draw people in to come listen to Paul. In Acts chapter 20, in verse 7, after traveling through Greece, he arrives in Troas on the first day of the week, and when the disciples come together to break bread, Paul, ready to depart the next day, spoke to them and continued his message until midnight. And I always like to make jokes at this passage that when that's the consequence as a preacher, when you go too long, that what happens in the next verse is that this poor guy named Eutychus falls asleep and falls out of the window and dies, and that is until Paul wakes him up. So preachers, don't preach past midnight. But jokes aside, it sounds like they were there and just didn't want to leave. They just wanted more. So the idea of having Paul as a guest speaker was enough to draw people there and keep them there even past midnight.
This reminds me of when some of our number go out to the Philippines and preach. When they get out there, we've heard there's
they'll have 20 speaking engagements scheduled, but throughout the course of the 2 weeks, they'll get another dozen or more scheduled.
Hey, well, since we're over
since
here,
you're here, can you come speak at our church?
Yeah, let's walk about 4 miles and talk over here with these people. That's kind of what it sounds like. They would go to this area, and there'd just be different pockets of people that would want to hear.
Yeah. Well, John, did you? I imagine gospel meetings were a regular part of your church experience and your upbringing. What are some of your fond memories?
Yeah, we used to have the week-long gospel meetings. We used to have in Southern California, we'd have these things called the Fairview Lectures. I think it would be that's probably like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday kind of thing. And the different men would preach. That
was one of my favorite things growing up.
Yeah.
I lived in Beaverton on the west side of Portland, but across town was the 160th Avenue Church of Christ. And every spring they coordinated it for Oregon spring break. They did the youth lectureship. Mm-hmm. And it was basically a gospel meeting, but planned and organized by the teenagers of that congregation. I think my grandpa back in the 70s or 80s was instrumental in getting that practice started and helping these kids to see, here's the planning that needs to go into it. You want a guest speaker? Who do you want? Okay, who's going to call him? Who's going to arrange his make his travel arrangements? You want to do something like a potluck? Where's it going to be? Whose house? And so
Yeah.
it was just giving them that
Yeah,
responsibility.
the thing is, we didn't have a lot of like youth things, but I mean, the adults got to have fun. I mean, so we had these lectureships and they had things like this. There weren't a lot of things for kind of like I said for youth lectureship. I think that would have been great. I'm glad that we were able to do those kinds of things today. And then like the moral based singing, every year in the summer, just outside of Morro Bay, the church there would be at one of the high schools there would be a big singing yearly. Um, and so I remember that. I think as a kid, the things that were the most fond memories were you got to see your friends every day that week,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And then on Friday night or whatever it was, um, someone had a big shindig at their house, a big potluck at their house, and so we got to go hang out at someone's house that night. Or even maybe multiple nights during the week, we'd have dinner with people or coffee
Yeah.
after evening service and stuff. So I just remember it being a lot of time around people, and everyone seemed to be enjoying people's company.
Well, that's where the real connections are made is you can only get to know someone so well talking to them after church on a Sunday afternoon. It's in your home when people can relax a little bit and you get to know the real them, they get to know the real you.
Mhm.
That's when those strong connections. I think about the people that have been my friends for my entire life. They're people that I did these things with. And the camaraderie. I didn't have a lot of people my age at the church in Beaverton. There was a big group older than me with my two older brothers. They had a lot of peers. There was a pretty large group just younger than me by a couple years, but I didn't have a lot of kids my age. But going to these other events like the youth lectureship, that was so much fun. It'd be like the Beaverton kids and 160th kids playing volleyball against each other, and I made so many friends at these events. Uh, People that have been my friends ever since.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was also the key thing is it wasn't just the people that you saw every day, every week, every Sunday. You always had this kind of mix of extended people you got to see at camp or you got to see
Yeah.
different times of the year. And I think um, I think also too what it instilled as a kid is just um, the sense that it wasn't just you and your own congregation.
Yeah.
The world got a little bit, smaller, as they say. We got to see that there's a lot of other people of like faith and minds
Oh,
that
yeah.
actually want,
Well,
a
and
thirst for God's word and, valued it and would drive distances. I
yeah,
mean, they drive hours.
I didn't have very many kids at church my age, and I went to the largest public high school in the state of Oregon, so I did feel alone. But as soon as I got my driver's license, especially in the summertime when I didn't have school Monday morning, every Sunday night, just about, I was driving to one of the other churches. There were 3 or 4 churches within an hour drive, or less, and I was there every Sunday night because and camp was another big one. Not directly related to church,
Yeah.
but it provides opportunities for Christians to get to know each other. I made so many friends, not just in the Portland area, but even in Washington and California, people that I'm still very close with today. And going to these events was like a small reunion.
If we didn't have those as kids, I just don't know if we would have really even interacted with many Christians outside of the small group that we would have had. I mean, without those, our world was very separate.
Yeah.
You didn't kind of, we were at our own church on Sundays, unless you went on a vacation or something. But even then, you don't go vacation like an hour or two away. You go, you go some distances. So, not knowing that there are a couple congregations within a 100-mile radius, I think that we would have had no connection to most people.
Yeah. And as I went through high school, I had a fairly good group of friends at school. But the more I went through high school, the experiences with my Christian friends became the ones I looked forward
Yeah,
to, and those connections, because of our shared faith, became even stronger. And these opportunities just provided uh, the means for me to make those connections and friendships, and that you almost have to do this
yeah,
because on Sunday I'm going to be at my
yeah.
congregation, and my friends are going to be at their congregation, and you don't get those opportunities unless there's something like on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. throughout the week, that just makes it a lot easier to, um, you're not forsaking your congregation, but you're getting these opportunities to go and meet other Christians and worship
Yeah.
God with them. And besides the friendships, it was the content of the lessons.
Right.
Gospel meetings, by their nature, are inherently designed for a series where you can, a series on Sunday mornings is great, but you're going a week in between lessons. If you're doing 4 or 5 lessons, it's been a month or a month and a half since the introduction, and you might not remember everything that was set up in that first lesson. But when you go for a week long meeting, you're getting 4, 5, 6, 7 lessons in 4 to 5 days' time, and it's still fresh. And those are some of the most beneficial experiences from a faith building standpoint as well. Not just the friendships, but I grew up with great preaching. I grew up in Kirkland, Washington, hearing Mark Davis preach, and great memories there. As a teenager, moving back to Oregon, Mark Dunnigan, very influential in my life. But I can also specifically remember a handful of meetings that stuck with me. Barry Kirchville
Mhm.
came and did this lesson on being an ambassador for Christ, and that was in my teenage years, where I was still a very fresh Christian, and I was still very green when it came to knowing the Bible.
Yeah.
I was still in that phase of born, raised in the church, and I knew it all. I hadn't really read it in depth for myself, and Barry came in and really challenged me.
Would you say that's probably the most memorable gospel meeting or a preacher that you've had as a
Probably,
kid?
probably the one that set
Yeah.
a fire within me, because I remember going up to him afterwards and being like, I love this series of lessons. Do you have like a book you could recommend? And he just said, the Bible. And I just felt like, yeah, that was,
Yeah.
I was just asking you a question to sound smart, but he really boiled it down to its simplest and really challenged. That was the challenge I needed. Was I was looking to sound smart, and all I needed was the Bible right in front of me.
Yeah.
And so it was a
Which is
fairly,
funny because today, I mean, that's all you use a lot of times. I mean, you'll
yeah,
have a PowerPoint sometimes, but it's not like you have like tons of outlines and you memorize those things, you know?
yeah,
So some
and
things stick, right?
that was hugely important. I had several other great meetings that really just encouraged me and stuck with me. And so the lessons are great and
Yeah.
influential, and the impact of having 4, 5, 6, 7 lessons in a short span of time, uh, it it's unparalleled.
Yeah. I think Kilgore was a big influence on me. John Kilgore, he would come down to SoCal and then he'd come up here before, but I'm not a great orator speaker.
Yeah,
Um,
usually we think of song leading and preaching as mutually exclusive, and you can't have both.
yeah, and honestly, I was so inspired by I've been in music all my life, so I was really inspired by someone who was able to take the part of worship that has all the emotions and all the things that I love the most and kind of show me you can do it spontaneously.
Yeah,
I'd love it. Just walk right in the middle and be like, just start writing a song. He would go at it, and um, I think I was influenced. I think I learned to enjoy and to get excited for speakers coming in because of people like him that would come in and I'd see something different.
yeah,
I'd hear it. I'd have the Bible was presented slightly different than I had been used to
yeah.
hearing.
How I mean, we're not old. Well, I'm not, but uh,
Nice.
just in our lifetimes, how have you noticed the progression of meetings? How have they changed from childhood to what we typically see
Yeah.
today?
I'd say the overall is the amount of time we dedicate towards it. We kind of most congregations play around with the half a week. That's Sunday through Wednesday,
Yeah,
and or the weekend,
and Friday,
right? One's
Saturday,
a Friday,
Sunday.
Saturday,
That's
Sunday.
that's become very common. The last 2 meetings
Yeah,
I've done.
or even a guest preacher can be considered that by doing 2 sermons in a Bible class on
Yeah,
Sunday,
and
right?
there's good in that. I don't want to be
No. I
critical.
mean, it could give you more, right?
Yeah.
You could get more people if they didn't have to spend the whole time. But I feel like
Do you
we
think
still have a two a year type thing, and that's kind of like been a thing. And I think that they've just reduced the amount of attendances and thus the
yeah.
amount of time.
Do you think that's because we've just let our schedules become so busy that a week-long meeting just seems impractical, or I wonder why it is.
I don't know. I feel like I think we are out of practice. I think we're just not used to spinning, used to seeing a commitment level
Yeah.
more towards listening to. I mean, like you said before, you're not preaching till midnight, okay? But sometimes, I mean, come on,
Mhm.
you go over 10 minutes, and there's someone that's ready to eat lunch, and so I think that we've gotten out of the habit where they used to do like the tent meetings and stuff. They used to do those way back
Yeah.
in for hours and hours, and you'd hear multiple people preach and sing and stuff. And so I think that just society, culturally,
Yeah.
we've just gotten used to. Maybe it hasn't been sharp, but it's just been a kind of a reduction over
Yeah.
time.
Well, and historically, you can see that as a shift as well, that go back 100, 150 years or more in the tent meetings you talked
Yeah,
about. Gospel meetings they were viewed as more of an evangelistic thing,
yeah,
an attempt at drawing in a much larger crowd than would typically be there Sunday. And I think some of that is just attributed to you go back to the rural South 200 years ago, 150 years ago, you might have a radio, but you don't have TV or internet.
yeah. You need to spread the word. I mean, any
Why
ways that
not?
you could. Yeah,
Why not go listen to someone preach? And
yeah,
I and over time, it's the emphasis has shifted away from the evangelistic typically, though I've still seen some congregations do a meeting that's an invite a friend gospel
sure.
meeting. And I think that would be an interesting concept to tinker with.
Yeah,
So it can still be done, but the emphasis has seemed to shift more towards encouragement within the congregation
yeah,
rather than an evangelistic effort outside of the congregation in the community. But it's still good to invite friends to a gospel
yeah.
meeting.
That's the value of maybe one of your gospel meetings a year being focused on something other than like evangelism, like something that you're not going to teach, you're not going to bring new people to Christ on a lesson series on evangelism. You're going to bring
Yeah,
existing, right? And so, but maybe it's like raising godly families, or those ones that are really kind of hit in societal perspectives and things, or even remember, what was his name? He used to do evolutionary, the dinosaur fossil.
oh, Dr. Patton.
Don Patton.
Yeah,
Don Patton? Yeah. So I remember when he would come out, and he'd bring like a whole table full of things you could go and see. And so when you have something new and a little different and exciting, you also can get people from the local crowds, local,
oh yeah,
areas to come out there, and they get a little spicy. And I think that kind of adds a little different flavor to those things too, when you have
yeah.
someone like that come out and preach about dinosaurs or evolution and those kinds of things. So
For me, the biggest benefit is simply a change of pace. And that's why
yeah,
you can't do meetings all the time, because if your change of pace happens all the time, then that becomes the
the
norm.
norm.
It's a change of pace because it's different from the norm. But honestly, I'm not surprised if people would say, Kyle, it's nice to hear someone different a couple
Yeah,
times a year. I don't blame them. And to be frank, I like to sit down and listen sometimes.
yeah,
And so that's why I love gospel meetings, but it can be a great change of pace. And it's just such a simple idea that even when you're preaching, you can go from very, very loud to really, really soft. A
yeah,
change of tempo, a long pause,
yeah.
a change of pace gets people's attention. So just a gospel meeting is just something different from the weekly norm. And that in itself can do some good and just be a shot in the arm. Give the
Yeah.
congregation a little boost of energy and zeal, as well as giving them some solid teaching. And I still think they have such a great benefit beyond the social aspect, which I think is hugely important.
Do you see kind of a difference too when you have a gospel meeting in the church, that the kind of tone shifts a little bit? What I notice is it becomes a little less structured routine, and a little bit more like, we're doing this because we really want to be here and do this. It's Monday night, right? Football's happening right now, but I'm here. I'm not watching.
Hmm.
So it's like, when I find that it it feels a little different throughout the week, because it feels a little more zealous. It feels like we're all wanting to really be here. where not that we don't want to be here on Sunday, but Sunday the expectation is to be there, and so we're a little bit more routine. So I just kind of get that kind of a different kind of vibe that
Yeah.
we're really enjoying being here and hearing these lessons. Kyle, what do you think our attitudes about these kinds of opportunities should be? The singings, the gospel meetings, just anything outside of the normal
Well,
worship
you're
service.
talking to a preacher where it's expected for me to be there, and it would be easy for me
Sure.
to get in that mindset,
You don't get paid
like
per time you walk
like
through the door, though,
well,
Kyle.
like Marshawn Lynch at the Super Bowl.
Just
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
yeah,
It could be easy for me, but as someone that has that expectation that I'm supposed to be here because it's
Sure.
my job, no one ever says that, but that's kind of the expectation you feel. I can say that there are times where it's challenging. VBS is hard. It's like $800 in gas because you're going back and forth because I live way out in Sanger.
sure. Yeah.
That's an exaggeration, but it does start adding up, and morning and evening, and I can admit there have been times where I was just thinking, do I really need to? But I feel like I have to, and I go, and I'm always glad I did.
Yeah.
So my answer is I have a little unique perspective being a preacher, but I can say that feeling that, I don't know if pressure is too strong a word, but feeling that expectation that I need to be there has made me go, and
Yeah.
I've always been glad that I went.
You know, Scott Young did one of the first sermons I think I heard from him probably 20 years ago. Was about whether or not we what our attitude should be about Wednesday nights, right? And it was basically, do I need to go Wednesday night? I don't remember the exact words he used, but the whole premise was, why shouldn't you want to take
Maybe
take
that
advantage
question,
of any opportunities? Like, rather than the question being why should I go or should I go, but be why wouldn't you want to? You know, if
why
we're
would you be
living
asking
for-
that question in the first place?
yeah, and if we're living for to glorify God in all that we do, with that kind of attitude, we're going to seek out opportunities. We're going to seek out weekly Bible studies. We're going to seek out Wednesday nights and these kinds of events to be closer with our brethren and to worship God in as many ways as we possibly can. So I think that our attitude should be to avail ourselves of any opportunities because
You're always going to benefit from it.
right.
It's something you're always going to benefit from. And I've been to a meeting or two where I wasn't particularly excited by the style of preaching, or even sometimes the content was a little like, oh, okay, I kind of know this stuff, but I make myself focus and pay attention and move past some of those surface level things. And even a less than exciting speaker, they're still sharing the scripture and they're still giving me something to contemplate. I'm still walking away net benefit.
Yeah.
I learned something. I thought about God for an hour. My mind was focused in the right place, and they gave me something scriptural to think about. So it's not even just about, is it the best, most exciting and engaging speaker? It's whether they are or not, it's still the best way to spend your time, opening God's word and thinking about and focusing your mind on God.
Yeah.
Well, I have an exciting opportunity to share with you about an upcoming event.
Well, so it is kind of funny though, because have we been laying it on a little heavy here? Because we have like 4 events that are coming up, or 3 events that I know of, and we're
we don't want you to feel guilty.
We're in the midst of plugging them right now, though.
We don't want you to feel guilty and come to these events because you're feeling guilty, but we do want you to come to these events because it'll be good for you.
Yeah, so we have a couple events coming up. What do we have?
Let's see, October 14th is our singing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something, the Clovis singing. I think we're going to do this spring and fall twice a year. And that's October 14th, I think at 4 p.m., right?
Correct.
And that's something that I love this because we had a lot of great gospel meetings and a couple of youth events in the Portland area growing up, but I never recall having an area-wide singing.
Yeah.
And so this is something I've really enjoyed that we've done this. This will be our 3rd one at Clovis now, right?
Yeah, so we just started it last fall, and I think the whole premise is just to provide another opportunity for people to travel and to come into town and visit. And so we're going to have singing from 4 to 6, and then one of our members is opening their homes up for potluck afterwards to
Yeah,
so
we'll
people can get
facilitate
to
that
it.
opportunity
Yeah.
to further strengthen the bonds within
Yeah.
this congregation and even Christians in the greater Central California area. So
Yeah. So that's going to be a fun event. Hopefully people can, it's been well attended so far. So
Yeah.
hopefully it will continue to be well attended.
November, we've got some things coming up in November, right? The 3rd and 4th.
Yeah. So the Clovis Youth Forum, lectureship, we started that in the spring, and we're going to try to do it in the fall because there's another one in another congregation north of here that does one in the spring. We don't want to compete that. We have more opportunities for kids to get together, and so I think we're gonna move it to the fall, and we're gonna try a 2-day.
Yeah, we're gonna try a Friday,
overnight,
and then have host homes for
Yep.
any of the young men or young women.
Invite a preacher into town. So that's going to be November 3rd and 4th, and we're going to get some more information out for that one for, I think we did 7th grade through college.
Yeah, and then we have a gospel meeting of our own,
Yep.
November 12th through the 15th.
Yep.
And that's with Tommy Peeler. This is one I'm excited
You know
about.
Tommy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he was on staff at Florida College when I was a student there, and then I've met him a time or two since moving on from Florida College. A couple years ago when I still lived in Texas, he came and did a meeting there, and this is a meeting I feel pretty comfortable recommending.
We don't know the topic yet. I think we're still hearing into that, so we'll get that out. But yeah, we have a lot going on, and it's exciting. And then the list starts kind of over again, in the spring. So
what I hope and the effort we're putting towards these is that the experiences you and I had, we can help provide and facilitate for those experiences that one of the guys we have come into our gospel meeting can have that same impact, that they can preach a series of lessons that wakes up somebody to a greater spiritual awareness.
Yeah.
Or that through these events where we bring in some youth from our own congregation and hopefully from other areas too, we can help them make some friends and see that their world is bigger than they might realize, and that they might feel alone out in the world at school or whatever, but they know that they have lots of friends within the body of Christ. And if we can help facilitate those strong memories like you and I have, I'll consider it a job well done, and I'll be very, very satisfied with the result.
Yeah, that's all we're really trying to do.
So in the words of Emperor Palpatine, if you're wondering if you're going to be here or not, do it.
Do it. Yeah, hopefully you all can make it. We'd love to see you, no matter where you're going to come from. Let us know if you're coming, and we'll save you a seat.
Or if you're more of a Trekkie, make it so.
Make it so.
Well, hey, thanks for tuning in to the Exhorter podcast today. I know we were down a couple guys, but I don't know. I think John and I held the fort pretty good and gave you something to think about and encourage you, whether you live in the Central California area and you can come to our events, or whatever congregation is home to you. I hope we gave you a little bit of an encouragement, a little bit of a nudge to go to these events and take advantage of every opportunity you have to be with others.
It was nice to kind of reminisce about these kinds of events.
Have we become the old guys that talk about back in my day, we used to have week-long gospel meetings?
Probably, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you can just do all our...
Was Nate the helpful one? Nate and Paul? No, they can't be the funny ones.
Yeah, no.
Nate and... No outtakes for this one? They're not the funny ones. It's you and me.
Mm-hmm.
We're the funny ones.
But we need the deadpan guys to bounce off.
Yeah, bounce off. Oh, well.
Yeah.
What was that joke?
Oh, yeah. I found out after having an eye test that all this time I've actually been colorblind.
Yeah? Welcome to the club, man.
Yeah, it really came out of the purple.
Yeah.
I heard another good one today.
Yeah?
Do you know what happened to the rainbow after it committed a crime? It went to prison.
Prism.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's okay. It had some time to reflect.
Their dad.
Yeah.
Dad jokes.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
Yeah.
That
I
one came from
was
Joe.
really worried about the rainbow one that we're saying. Oh, well. That's it.